Hello friends, and welcome back to the beautiful cypress forest of Caddo Lake. Last year I traveled here for the first time in search of some fall color photography, but was met with some pretty challenging conditions. I felt compelled to head back here to capture the elusive mist on the water. This trip I managed to see some unbelievable light, which I'm super excited to share with you all, but more importantly this trip taught me a lot about myself as a photographer in those moments where the conditions weren't quite as good, both challenging my creativity and giving me some of my best images of the year. I really hope you all enjoy watching. Hello everyone. Michael Shainblum here, and welcome to a brand new landscape photography vlog. And this time I am back out on the bayou. Got myself a kayak, just having a relaxing day, photographing. It's a little bit rainy right now, as you can see around me. It's been poured rain this morning, and then it's just been misty today. But I think what's really cool about the rain is it's actually given a lot of atmosphere to the trees in here, which is something that I did not have last year. So here's at about 28 millimeters. And if I compress the scene, just look at that. I mean, already even in this shot, there's a decent amount of separation between the tree line, which is really nice. And, you know, it's just all about finding the right arrangement of trees and the right arrangement of fall color. Now, the other thing I can do besides arranging the trees in an interesting way is also just focus on more of the textures and the branches, which is kind of what I did last year. And really, I think the toughest thing about photographing in here is it's a massive puzzle. It's like any other woodland scene, but, you know, you're on the water, so it does add a layer of difficulty, you know, not being on stationary ground and really being able to fine-tune a tripod. So when I'm shooting this style of photography from a kayak, I have two techniques that I've found work really well. So the first is doing a handheld shot, and this requires using a decent amount of your camera's in-camera stabilization and your lens stabilization. And then you basically just bump your ISO to compensate and give yourself the breathing room with the shutter speed. So giving yourself a higher shutter speed so you don't get a blurry shot. And you basically take the shutter speed down as low as you possibly can while still getting a nice, clean handheld shot. It gives you a lot more flexibility when you're moving around and just to see a shot and capture it quickly. Now, what I've been doing is using that more as my scouting technique. And then if there's a way of getting the tripod in the water, like if the water is shallow enough to put the tripod in there, if I really like the composition, I'll stop what I'm doing, put the tripod in, and then do a long exposure that way so that I can take that ISO down to 100 and get a completely clean image. First thing we need to do though, before we start shooting, is find a composition that we like. After paddling around for a little while, I finally found a grouping of trees that I thought would work perfect for a long exposure. All right, so I think I found a grouping of trees that looks really nice. I can go ahead and do ISO 100. I think I'm gonna try f13 for this, and then do a slight long exposure. So that puts me at about 0.4 of a second for this composition. So I thought this shot turned out really well with that color contrast of the deeper oranges in the fall color, matched with those subtle blues from the mist in the background. I love how that rain added just enough atmosphere to really separate those foreground trees from the background. And even though these conditions were already way better than what I saw last year, it just got me more and more excited for the potential to see mist on the water. Okay. There's so much sludge on the tripod, I'm going to try and reposition this. Let's see if we can kind of use the tripod to move around. We can scoot around the sludge here. Okay. I think I got it. Got it locked in. There we go. This looks so good with the green foliage down below too. You've got the fall colors, the reflection is shining through in this direction. Here's something a bit different from the previous images, really utilizing those two trees on either side as framing elements for the cypress tree in the background. I'd say the toughest part about shooting these images was really just getting that kayak into the right position. I felt like I had to move back and forth for a long time before I finally got the position where the tree was right smack dab in the center. The next morning we woke up bright and early for a sunrise boat tour, and at first it seemed like it was going to be a pretty dreary boat ride with rain in the forecast and full cloud cover. But luckily, as that rain started subsiding, it created some really mysterious layering of fog on the water. And so with my 100-400 telephoto lens in hand, here's what I captured. I really loved the ethereal look to these images, completely removing the background and just isolating the trees. I went for a high-key look to these images, but funny enough, while I was shooting them, it was really quite dark out there. And that presented a tough challenge technique-wise, because there was no way for me to use my long exposure tripod technique. I had to shoot everything handheld. So for these, I used my lowest possible f-stop and my lowest possible shutter speed while still getting a crisp shot. This meant bumping my ISO really high to 1600 and even 3200 for some of these images. Lightroom denoise really came in handy here to clean up the photographs and gave me results that I'm really happy with. One of the things I really wanted to try this trip that I didn't get a chance to do last year was aerial photography. And sure enough, seeing these trees from above gave a completely different perspective. Here's a simple wide-angle perspective taken from above, with that first bit of warm light hitting the trees. I thought that the low clouds in the background added a nice bit of texture to the scene here, and it was cool to see the mixture of trees on the open water with the thicker forests in the background. Even when the conditions were tough, I still had such a fun time out there photographing with friends, and I still managed to shoot a lot of stuff I'm really happy with. Now, I'm no wildlife photographer, and my friends on this trip certainly took way better images of these egrets than I did, but here's just a simple one taken with my 100-400 lens. Now, I did try and shoot a few video shots of these birds in motion, and here's how those turned out. One of the ways I decided to be more creative during these harsh conditions was focusing on the edge between light and shadow, and really spotlighting just certain elements of the trees against the background. Here's one that I thought turned out really nice with the dappled light hitting the bottom of the cypress tree here. And these little spiky trunks are called cypress knees. They're all over the lake and they're absolutely incredible, but so tough to find the right composition of them. I captured hundreds of images of cypress knees, and this ended up being my favorite of the bunch. After shooting these, the boat dropped me off at a little fishing platform, and I decided to try something a little bit different. Alright, you guys, so I'm in kind of an interesting spot right now. Took a boat tour on the water, and I'm shooting from a platform that's just kind of in the middle of the lake. And let me show you what I'm standing on here. Seems sturdy enough, right? Got the water down below. The boat dropped me off, and now they are sailing off into that direction. I'm really hoping they come and pick me back up. I think they will, right? People here are nice enough to come pick me back up, but I have some really nice trees in front of me with some fall color, and I'm just playing around with some different compositions. It's quite dark right now, so I'm doing pretty long exposures here. So f16, 3.2 second exposure, ISO 500. It's just beautiful. There's some really nice reflected light going on because the sky is getting this pink tone. There's some beautiful compositions in this direction too, so just kind of seeing what's possible right now. The thing about these trees that I can't get over is just how much character they have. I mean, every single tree in here, every single patch is just so unique. Luckily, Gavin's not the boat captain over there, or I don't think I would ever see land again. Ooh, I think I found a really nice spot to kind of isolate some of these trees, some of the color in here. The only thing is it's really dark now, so I have to do now a 10-second exposure at f11 and ISO 500. I guess if I don't get picked up, I could always just spend the night here. Just keep taking pictures all evening. My rescue team is here, thank God. I was stranded for months. A lot of the daytime was spent joking around and having fun on the dock, which is one of my favorite parts about doing these photography trips, is just having fun with good people and enjoying the beautiful scenery. But as I was sitting on the dock, I noticed a little section of flowers out in the distance that I thought might make for a really nice wide-angle frame. So for the first time this trip, I pulled out the 12 to 24 millimeter lens, and then I shot this. Now this photograph might look simple, but this was so challenging to shoot, and I'm not entirely sure it was worth the trouble. Because these flowers are a species of plant that are growing on the water and just kind of floating around. So I had to get really close to them with my wide-angle lens, do an entire focus stack for the flowers to the background, even though they would slightly move in between each shot, and then I had to exposure blend for that sun star in the distance. After a few days of gorgeous sunshine, we did encounter another overcast day, and I would say these are the toughest conditions to shoot in here. The flat lighting can make it tough to get depth, and without the mist in the background, you see literally every single tree out there. But we set out for another boat ride to see what else we could shoot. All right, so it's after sunrise, and we're at a different part of the lake right now. Absolutely beautiful. I think so far it's been our favorite part of the lake. And the lighting has been a little tricky. We're hoping for some sunlight to shine through, but as you can see, it is really overcast. Been mainly sticking to handheld exposures, doing pretty much the same technique that I've been doing on the kayaks. So, bumping my ISO a bit to compensate, and then trying to go with a fairly large f-stop to get more of the scene in focus. I think I see a shot out in the distance. Beautiful colors and reflections right now. Now, it was nearing the end of our trip, and even though we experienced some beautiful conditions, I still hadn't seen that low mist on the water with the light rays piercing through and the burning fog, and I was starting to think that was wishful thinking, and I'd need to visit here for 5 years to experience that. But to our surprise, we were finally able to witness the moment we'd all been waiting for.
Oh my God! She's beautiful.
Look at that. utilized all the techniques I shared previously in this video with handheld exposures using stabilization and quick shutter speeds, as well as some long exposures when I could prop the tripod in the water. I felt like it ended up being a good thing that I experienced this moment towards the end of the trip where I was fully prepared for it and had already done a decent amount of scouting. And not being able to see something like this last trip just made it that much more special when I was able to finally experience the moment. But shortly after photographing these, the light started piercing through the fog, and it felt like a moment out of a fairy tale. Looking back at this trip as a retrospective really made me think a lot about my approach to photography, because even though this trip I was able to experience those conditions I'd been dreaming of, even without those moments I still would have been really happy with the portfolio I was able to create here. So much more so than what I shot last year. Now it's tough because when you visit a place for the first time, you're new to the place, you're new to the shooting techniques, and maybe it's a subject you've never captured before. But even with all that in mind, I just felt like the first time I was here, I didn't fully express my creativity and use all the available techniques to work with the different lighting conditions to create compelling photography. When it was clear out, utilizing aerial photography to get a different perspective, and also focusing on the edges of light and shadow. When it was overcast, really focusing in on textures, patterns, and colors, and then even utilizing rain as an atmospheric element. So I know I've said this many times, but remember, you can take interesting photographs under any conditions. It's all about you as an artist and your creativity. How much are you willing to put into the shoot? And setting your expectations aside to truly allow yourself to enjoy the shoot and the beauty that's all around you. So with that, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And if you want to learn more from me, you can check out my workshop page over on my website. I offer both one-on-one workshops, in-field and post-processing, as well as group travel workshops. As always, I really appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.